On this episode of the AAF Exchange, tariffs, inflation, and reconciliation. Joining us to discuss all of this are AAF President Douglas Holtz-Eakin and Trade Policy Analyst Jacob Jensen. Doug, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on the day after Liberation.
I know, so I probably already can guess, but tell us what's been on your mind recently.
Liberation Day and the absolutely baseless formula the administration used to calculate the so-called reciprocal tariffs. This is a fraudulent foundation to a ridiculous policy, and I'm embarrassed for the NEC, the CEA, and all of the people who actually know something about international trade in the administration, because this is just appalling. So here's the short version. What they said a reciprocal tariff was, you'd look at the impediments to us selling in their market. So tariffs, non-tariff barriers like, buy Slovakia requirements, exchange rate manipulation, VATs, which we can fight about, but that was on the list. So that's what they said. What they did was they looked at how big the trade surplus was for that country, and basically found the tariff that would make it zero, which says that all trade surpluses, and thus our trade deficits, come from unfair trade practices, which is just bonzo. And so if you assume that everything's cheating, you calculate a very large amount of cheating. Yeah. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And the numbers made no sense. Like when the president, who should get, a job as a signboard guy, sort of hang out that chart, it was like, these numbers make no sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I know Jacob's going to get into the economics and what all the tariffs are, but just it was hard for me. I mean, it was hard for you to figure it out, that it's going to be, as an economist, it's almost impossible for me as a layperson to figure out.
This is macroeconomic policy malpractice. Period.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, let's move on.
Okay.
To something
something cheerier.
Yeah. The economy. Let's talk about that. That's cheery.
We used to have one of those.
Yeah. So inflation. That's sticking around.
Yes.
We had the CPI last week. What did those latest reports tell us? And how is the Fed responding?
So we've now seen January, February inflation data, which in broad terms showed like some modest upticks last month and sort of no real progress. That's all prior to the imposition of large amounts of tariffs. We'll get March CPI data next, and we'll see what the steel and aluminum tariffs did, tariffs on China. But we haven't actually had a lot of tariffs yet. So there's been a fair amount of maybe people will raise their prices in anticipation of them. We know that everyone bought a car ahead of the tariffs being imposed, so that can put pressure on
almost
prices.
Everyone.
Things like that. Yes, well, almost everyone too. So I think this really makes the Fed nervous, right? We had this policy. We thought we were on a track to go to 2%. We cut 100 basis points because we thought we were on track to go to 2%. We went to 2.5 or 3%. The cores are both at about 2.93, and so 2.8. And we're not making any further progress. And now we got pressures going the other direction, which puts them in just a really tough position because, Trump, imposed massive amounts of tariffs. Now the Fed's going to have to make the case that you can look past those tariffs. They're a one-time thing. Don't count them as part of the inflation picture, and then do the policy based on everything else on the ground. But to me, that says, okay, this is quite likely to just really hammer the economy and slow growth. They're probably going to be easing in the second half of this year. I mean, the question is just how quickly they feel they have to do it. And the inflation won't be down to 2. So there we are.
So we're looking at another year of above 2% inflation, more than
probably.
likely. So does that mean the Fed has to consider raising rates again?
I think that they will consider it and not. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they could lean against the inflation. They could continue to do that, look past the one-time tariff, and then just say we need to be a little more restrictive. But I think that endangers the employment mandate way too much. And they have both, and they have to trade them off. And I think, to their chagrin, they will not have gotten the genie back in the bottle entirely.
So we'll just have to coast for another year on inflation.
And then the concern, of course, is that inflation expectations are bouncing up out there. The hawks are going to make the case. Look, we have to get the inflation expectations back, have to get inflation back, and only then will we get good economic performance. So this easing will just make things worse down the road. But I think they'll probably lose.
Interesting. What about the risk of a recession? I mean, how likely is one this year?
I'll hide behind other estimates. They're up to 0.4 at J.P. Morgan. That was prior to the tariffs. So I think you got to be over 50% at this point, given the scale and sweeping nature of the tariffs. I mean, we're working like mad to avoid the sunset of Tax Cuts and Jobs Act because that would be a $425 billion tax increase, and that would create a recession. He announced yesterday a $500 to $600 billion tax increase starting now.
Yeah.
It's hard not to be pessimistic about the outlook.
Interesting. This week we'll learn, of course, what March employment looked like.
Yes, that's tomorrow.
What might we learn?
I think all the indicators are that it'll be okay. We got the ADP is 155,000. The ISM showed a modest decline in the employment index. There aren't that many people employed in the manufacturing sector. So I think another 100,000 to 150,000 odd jobs probably in the cards. Unemployment rate remains low. We have seen no sharp spike in UI claims. So the economy has noticeably slowed, sentiment's down, all of that. But we're not in a recession now.
Yeah.
We're just running the very, very large risk of going into one.
So basically what my feeling is that there's just not a lot of job openings. There's not a lot of upward, mobility. You can't go.
Yeah, no, I mean, Chair Powell said it best. He goes, if you got a job, you're keeping it. But if you're looking for one, you're not getting it.
Yeah.
And then so that's sort of where the labor market's been for a while.
Interesting. All right, well, let's turn to another fun topic, Congress, and the reconciliation process is moving on. And we have the quote unquote pay fors coming up, specifically reforms to the large health entitlements. Would you walk us through what to expect on the healthcare front?
So in general, my deep belief is that when you start doing policy, health policy in particular, for budgetary purposes, you usually make mistakes. And because it's really easy to save money in health. Don't cover anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you great health outcomes, unfortunately. So budgetary health and good policy health are often really at odds. I'm worried about how the dynamic here. So we know that, for example, the Energy and Commerce Committee got this $880 billion instruction to cut spending. And if you just look at the things they have in the jurisdiction, the only place where there's that much money is in Medicaid. Or even close to that. So the presumption was they're going to cut Medicaid, and then the president said Medicaid's off the table. So, and Medicare and Social Security are off the table. So where are they going to go? Well, I'm afraid that they will start turning things that really are benefits to beneficiaries into either waste or fraud or something like that. So go to Medicare Advantage. MedPAC has a report out that Medicare Advantage spends 23% more on a patient than fee-for-service. I view that as a essentially empty observation. They are not the same delivery systems. They don't even bother to measure outcomes in fee-for-service. We have no idea what we're getting. But you could just take that number and say, okay, well, that's waste. 23% waste. Okay, so we'll just cut that out of Medicare Advantage. Well, if you do that, the money's got to come from somewhere. They're just going to raise premiums. So that's how we're solving the pay fors. We're going to have the seniors pay for it in premiums every month.
Yeah.
No. So
that's a political nightmare.
Yeah. So that's where they are. I mean, we're going to have some things where you just are sort of pursuing bad ideas, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that.
The other bad idea mistake you've argued about is the elimination of sea salt.
Oh, yes. Now you just want me to have a corner here.
Well, we started off hot with the tariffs, so might as well just keep it going and just get it all out now.
Okay.
What is this tax provision, and why are you concerned?
This is the deductibility of state and local taxes by corporations, businesses in general. So the political thinking has been, okay, so if we're going to take the SALT cap, the individual's ability to deduct state and local taxes, and move it up so we lose some money, we'll recoup it by having sea salt cap and limit them. And somehow that's okay. There's this pairing. And some analysts have even bought into, well, it's okay if they cap sea salt as long as they use the money for business provisions. No. Full no to both. When you measure income, you look at revenue minus all of the costs of earning that revenue, including taxes paid to state and local governments for the roads and the sewers and the other infrastructure. I mean, that's accurate measurement. This is just measuring things right, and then you tax it. To cap it is to deliberately mismeasure income and to, in a backdoor way, raise the tax rate on corporations and other businesses. There's been a pretty widespread agreement we're not raising the corporate tax rate, but this would. So what's up? It makes no tax policy sense, and it's just playing games and hiding behind the numbers, and I just don't like it.
Yeah, I know a lot of this is because, like, I think you've said this before, they're trying to equate it to the salt.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a completely different animal, right? You know, salt is about the fact that, you know, when I lived in upstate New York and paid a lot of property taxes, many of them went for the municipal pool, which had the municipal golf course, which had the municipal workout room, which is just a private health club being paid for by the municipality, and I get to deduct the cost of it. I don't get to deduct the cost if I just join a private health club.
Yeah.
So the idea is cut off that consumption of state local services by individuals. That's what they're paying for. They're paying for the schools, they're paying for the health clubs, all that stuff. That's a different animal than cost of doing business.
Right. Well, you know, I'd like to deduct my golf membership, but unfortunately, that's
we had a $1.8 trillion deficit last year, Colin. I know how much you golf.
Well, that's fair enough. All right, we've been pretty negative today, but so on a happy note, baseball season's back. I mean, I'm happy about it. I hope you are.
Oh yeah, the Pirates are going to kill it. Meaning my interest in baseball. Well, they're still one of the great young pitchers in the game.
Yeah,
fun to watch.
Skeens
is
just
unbelievable.
He's going for something. He's going for greatness, and he's all halfway there already. And it's
fun to watch.
Year two.
It is fun to watch.
It's fun to watch. Yeah, the Red Sox have given me a lot of hope, so that means there's going to be a lot of heartbreak.
That just means it's April.
All right, Doug, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Jacob, welcome back.
Great to be back. Happy post-Liberation Day.
You and Doug had both the same happy greetings, but yeah, you've been a busy man the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I've been up for a while running the numbers.
Well, let's get into some of those numbers.
Yeah.
So President Trump obviously announced his Liberation Day tariffs yesterday. What happened? Were there any surprises?
Yeah, I'd say it was a major surprise. It kind of beat all previous estimates on what was going to happen that day. There was some speculation that he was going to do individual tariff rates on every country based on the average tariffs of those countries. That didn't really happen. There was another prediction that he was going to do a tiered system. That didn't really happen. And another prediction that he was going to do just a flat universal tariff, and that didn't really happen either. He did do individual tariffs on every country, but a lot of these tariffs are 30% plus because he's trying to factor in non-tariff barriers. So it beat expectations all across the board.
So it's basically the scope of this is a lot bigger than you had originally anticipated, right?
I don't think anyone did.
Yeah. So and a lot of a lot of those tariffs that he announced yesterday too are on top of what tariffs have already been implemented, right?
Right. So there's already the 20% on China, and this additional 34% means Chinese tariff rates are going to be 54% on most imports from China.
That's fun.
Yeah, never heard of in history.
It's certainly, yeah. What will the impact of these tariffs be?
Well, it's going to cost U.S. consumers and businesses a whole lot more every year. There's a lot of talk that this is one of the largest tax increases in U.S. history. And from what I've found, this is going to cost U.S. consumers anywhere between $300 billion annually to up to almost $400 billion. Just these tariffs alone announced the other day.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because Doug has made this reference before that not one country can build the iPhone, right? So like it's just as simple as something as your iPhone, something that I would say most Americans use every day. Like you have to use other countries, and that's going to require trade with those countries to build.
Exactly. Supply chains are very complex. A lot of goods made in the U.S. require inputs from all other countries. So. Those American-made goods are also going to probably increase in price.
Interesting, yeah, and that, not to mention food and aluminum, and he's mentioned pharmaceuticals as well. I mean, those are all things that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Actually, there were some exemptions in the executive order for lumber, copper, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. But if you notice, these are all industries and sectors that he's previously mentioned he wants to do separate tariffs on. So expect more tariffs in the future.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I mean, what's the goal with these tariffs? I mean, the administration has to have something. We've heard a couple of different goals, I think. But so lay those out for us, and then what comes next?
Well, the rationale behind these tariffs was that it was a national security threat that the U.S. had such a large trade deficit, and so that justified the use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA tariffs, which we've seen before. So I guess the goal of this is to bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States, reduce trade deficits, things of that nature, and potentially raise revenue.
Yeah. So I mean, how do these tariffs go away at some point, or do they, or is that even the plan?
It's really unknown if that is a plan, if this is a negotiating tactic or not. It hasn't been outlined. Israel, for example, they reduced all tariffs, and so did Vietnam, yet they still got hit with reciprocal tariffs. So no one really knows whether this is a negotiating tactic or not.
Interesting. Well, Jacob, I'm sure that this conversation's not over, and you're going to have a lot more to say on this. I know you're probably working on a few insights or pieces now, so I'll let you get back to that.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.